Hi, I'm Miss Tyler, and welcome to Context for Kids, episode 13, Shemot, which covers Exodus 1:1 to 6:1. Shemot in Hebrew means names because we start out with names, but Exodus, one of the most exciting books of the Bible. Okay, so we've got a really exciting week because we're completely changing gears. Everyone we've been studying about for the past 12 weeks is dead, long gone, and now we're dealing with their great grandchildren. In 1 Chronicles 6, we're going to look at the genealogy of Moses, who, of course, most of the rest of the Torah is about. Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. Moses is the big name. And in 1 Chronicles 6, we see that Moses was descended from, I almost said Abraham's, from Jacob's third son, Levi. And Levi had a son named Kehat, then Kehat had a son named Amram, and then Amram had a son named Moses. And Moses and Aaron and Miriam are the three people we're going to be talking the most about. So I hope you're excited to go through this with me. Now, this is the last week for you to submit coloring pages for me. I'm accepting them until December 31st, and then we're going to have a drawing and see who wins one of the free textbooks, and it's your choice between Context for Kids, Honor and Shame in the Bible, a 50-week, wow, 10-week, 50-day family dinner table curriculum on honor and shame, one of the underlying themes of the Bible, or King, Kingdom, Citizen, His Reign and Our Identity. And that one is great for adults or for high schoolers, and it covers all of the hot ancient Near Eastern topics that we love to study. So send them to me, email or snail mail, and next week, in a week, I'm going to do the drawing, and you're going to find out who won, and good luck. I'm very excited. Okay, so here we go, Shemot. Now, one of the things that surprised me, and it's funny, I've been reading the Bible for, goodness sakes, it'll be 17 years come up next month. And I just noticed something for the first time. I always had this idea that the Hebrews were like slaves for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years. But if you look at Genesis 1, that's going to be a hard habit to break. Exodus 1 and 2, we have only 2 pharaohs mentioned. And that's going to be really, really important for the second part of our lesson. We have the Pharaoh who did not know Joseph, who enslaves the Israelites initially, and when he dies, we have the Pharaoh who Moses comes up against. The first Pharaoh who enslaved all the Israelites and said that the babies had to die, that was Moses's adopted grandfather, of course. And then the new Pharaoh was the one that Moses went head to head with. And that's going to be fun talking about that. So anyway, so we have 2 pharaohs, and that's really important, but again, I'll tell you in a little bit. Now, the first part of the lesson is kind of a real downer, but I want you to understand why it happens. In Exodus 1:22, we see that the Egyptians were really, really upset because the Hebrews were continuously being blessed. The Israelites were being blessed in Egypt, and they were multiplying greatly. And they were saying, these guys keep getting more powerful. They're going to side with our enemies, and they're going to fight against us, and they're going to kick our tails. So let's make them slaves. Well, they made them slaves, and it didn't work. I mean, they kept having even more babies and being more blessed because, God doesn't need us to be in a good situation to bless us. He can bless us whether we're slaves or whether we're kings. It just doesn't matter because he's a God that's bigger than human institutions. So anyway, they're throwing the babies into the river. Now, why would they do that? Well, I'm going to tell you something called the ancient ordeal by water. And this was practiced all over the world. And it was even still practiced during the Spanish Inquisition. And it went like this. And we see it in the laws of Hammurabi. And Hammurabi was a Babylonian king who lived about the same time as Abraham. Okay, and so a lot of his laws are the same as we see throughout the world at this time. Some of his laws are very good, some of his laws were not very good, but we're going to talk about that more in coming weeks because Hammurabi, we get a little context from that. So, ordeal by water. Someone was, accused of a terrible crime. How do you find out if he's guilty? Well, let's throw him into the lake, and if he drowns, he's guilty. It seems funny to us, and this is one of the things where context, we have to realize that they didn't think the same way that we think. We go, well, logically, if someone doesn't drown, it means they were just a really good swimmer. So, here's a tip for you kids. If you were in the ancient Near East and you wanted to be a criminal, learn how to swim. But they don't think of that. They think that regardless of how well you do or do not swim, that there were gods, and if you were righteous, they would deliver you from the river. Okay? And if you were unrighteous, they would take you and drown you. So the Egyptians, they were throwing these slave babies in the river, and any sense of horror that the world would have felt would have been, oh, well, they all drowned. Okay. They must be a wicked race. And it does seem ridiculous to us. But that's the way they thought. Remember, they didn't have science. They had gods. And they served the same function. It just kind of took diametrically opposed ways of thinking. And they would look at science and go, really, you think that the sun is a great, big, controlled nuclear, did you say nuclear reaction? You go with that. Yeah. And then, I'm just going to keep praying to Rod. He's going to, do the real work of rowing it across the sky in his boat every day. But have fun with your delusion. We think they're delusional. They would think we're delusional. We think the way we think because our parents taught us to think this way. They thought the way they thought because their parents taught them to think that way. Scientific thinking is really very new. People just didn't do it. So, it doesn't mean they were stupid, because some of these stories about, the god, they're pretty darn. And every culture's sun god stories are completely different, and every culture's agricultural god stories are completely different. I mean, it's kind of like, wow, it was like this endless variety of just these theories, and some things were similar, but wow, these guys had some great imaginations. Anyway, so that was the ordeal by water. Like I said, the other nations didn't freak out about it because the gods didn't save these babies. Gods aren't saving babies. They must be from a wicked race. Therefore, the Hebrews deserve to be enslaved. No problem here. All right, but now we get to the Pharaoh dies. Okay, the Pharaoh who is Moses' grandfather dies while Moses is in Midian. Now he's married Zipporah. He's had 2 kids. He's out there taking care of his father-in-law Jethro's sheep. Okay? And Pharaoh dies. And when Pharaoh dies, something weird happens. It seems strange. The Israelites start crying out for justice. Why weren't they crying out for justice the last 80 years? Because that's how long Moses has been alive at this point. Okay. Why hadn't they been crying out for 80 years? Well, they might have been crying out a little bit, but there was a specific crying out that was going on. And we've talked about righteousness and justice before, but we're going to go over it again because it's really important here. Righteousness and justice was very important in the ancient Near East and Africa and all throughout the world. And when a new king came to the throne, it was very important for him to be perceived by the world as a righteous and just king. How do you be known as a righteous and just king? You do acts of righteousness and justice. You get justice for the poor, widowed, orphaned, oppressed. And you punish the people who have been taking advantage of them. You pass laws that do sweeping reforms that bring justice to the land. You wipe out people's debts. You free the political prisoners from the prisons. And you free slaves. Okay? He didn't do it. Used to be done. When a pharaoh would die, he would free slaves. He did not free slaves. And so when they cried out, God heard. And he was going to demand that unrighteousness and injustice from that pharaoh, because he had done wrong even by the definitions of his own culture. Really, and I can't tell you, but the ordeal by water is going to come up again. And it's going to be the final judgment against Pharaoh. And in the eyes of the world, all the things we're about to see, all the plagues, and the crossing of the Red Sea, it's all going to be in the eyes of the world saying, was the Pharaoh of Egypt righteous? Or was the Pharaoh of Egypt unrighteous? I think you know where this is going. And it's a hilarious story when you know all the ancient Near Eastern context. So, anyway, that is this week's episode. That went faster than I thought it would. But I'm excited about Exodus, and next week we are going to talk about what Moses actually turned his staff into, and why that was seen as such a dangerous thing as far as Pharaoh ever getting a chance to have eternal life. Moses didn't just bring any old snake into the throne room. He brought in the biggest threat imaginable. And that's going to be a lot funnier once you know the context too. So remember, enter the drawing, and next week we'll see who wins the competition. I'm hoping to. I got 3 beautiful drawings just yesterday, but they're over there, so I can't get them. That's this week. And as always, I love you. I'm praying for you. I hope you're enjoying. And I'd love to get your questions. Love to hear your comments. Love to hear what's going on in your mind. And if there's something I haven't explained well, don't be afraid to ask, Or if you want to know where I found out something, always be willing to ask me, because a teacher needs to be able to answer questions. And I want you guys to get excited about learning and to know that it's not like I made all this stuff up. The resources I can use, you can use them too. You can learn these things now or when you're older, and your parents can learn these things. It's not a big secret. Bible context is for anyone who wants to study it. And I know you guys are smart, and I believe in you, and I'm so proud of you. You have a wonderful week, and enjoy studying the scripture together.